Hello everyone and welcome back. We are going to continue lesson 4, fraction operations. Today we are going to go over multiplication and division of fractions, and that's on page 248 of our Kaplan book. Okay. Multiplication and division of fractions differs a little bit from addition and subtraction of fractions, and here's how. It is not necessary to find a common denominator to multiply and divide fractions. Remember, this was key when we were adding and subtracting fractions. We said the denominators have to be the same. When we multiply them and divide them, however, we don't. It's not necessary to find a common denominator. To multiply fractions, simply multiply the numerators and then the denominators, and reduce the answer if necessary. So even another difference too is we are multiplying the denominators here, whereas before when we added and subtracted fractions, we did not change the denominator. It stayed the same. Okay, here's an example. What is the product of 7 over 8 and 1 over 2? Multiply the numerators together and then the denominators. The answer is in lowest terms. So here we have 7 over 8 times 1 over 2 equals 7 times 1. Again, we multiply across, multiply the numerators, and then multiply the denominators across. So 7 times 1 is 7, 8 times 2 is 16. And then we would not be able to reduce this fraction any further. 7 and 16, again, do not share a common factor. Okay, so that's lowest terms. Before multiplying a mixed number, change it to an improper fraction. So if you were asked, what is 1 over 3, or 1/3 of 3 3/4? So first, the first step is change 3 3/4 to an improper fraction. So that's a mixed number. Remember, the whole number in a fraction is a mixed number. And it tells us the first thing we should do is change that mixed number to an improper fraction. And they did it for us right here. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15. So that becomes our new numerator, and the denominator doesn't change. That's done. Step 2, multiply the numerators and the denominators. So again, just like our first example, and just like they told us in the directions, we would multiply the numerators across. So in this case, we have 15 over 4 times 1 over 3. 15 times 1 is 15. 4 times 3 is 12. Now we have in our answer, it tells us in step 3, change to a mixed number and reduced to lowest terms. In our answer, if you notice, we have the numerator is greater than the denominator. That's an improper fraction. We don't want to keep it that way. So step 3, again, told us to change it to a mixed number and then reduce to lowest terms. So we have to ask ourselves, how many times can 12 go into 15? The answer is 1. So that 1 is our whole number and our mixed number. What's remaining, right? So 15 minus 12, 3 is remaining. That becomes our numerator. And again, our denominator stays the same. Now, this fraction, 3 over 12, can be reduced. They can both, the numerator and denominator, can both be divided by 3. 3 divided by itself is 1. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So the final answer is 1 1/4. Okay? You can use a shortcut called canceling to reduce the fractions as you work the problem. To cancel, divide both a numerator and a denominator by the same number. The numerator and the denominator can be in different fractions. So, for example, multiply 1 and 1/2 by 1 and 1/5. The first step, change them to improper fractions. Remember, they're mixed numbers. So change them first to improper fractions. So 1 and 1/2 would be 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3 over the same denominator. So 3 over 2 is the improper fraction for this mixed number. And for 1 and 1/5, 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 over 5 is the improper fraction. Now, step 2 says set up the multiplication problem. Both 6, a numerator, and 2, a denominator, are evenly divisible by 2. Divide them by 2. Then multiply using the new numerator and denominator. Finally, change the improper fraction to a mixed number. So let's see what this is talking about. So again, we are now going to multiply. Instead of the two mixed numbers, we are going to multiply them as improper fractions. So 3 over 2 times 6 over 5 equals, now remember they tell us we can use a shortcut called canceling. And that's again looking for where I can reduce. So I'm going to go diagonally across. When we cancel, we got to go diagonally across. So 2 is divisible by itself, and 6 can also be divided by 2. 2 can go into itself 1 time, and into 6 3 times. So now 3 times 3 is 9, and 1 times 5 is 5. Again, I'm left with an improper fraction here, so I want to turn it to a mixed number. 5 can go into 9 1 time, with 4 remaining, and 5 does not change for my denominator. So this is the final answer, 1 4/5. The slash marks show that the numbers have been divided. Okay? You will need 2 additional steps to divide fractions. So we just completed the portion about multiplication. Now we're going to start talking about division. Before dividing, you have to invert the divisor, which is the fraction you are dividing by. To invert the fraction, this is important. This tells us what to do, what to invert means. Switch the numerator and the denominator. Finally, change the division symbol to a multiplication symbol and multiply. So really, when we're dividing fractions, in the end, we're going to actually be multiplying them. But there's one key step first. We have to flip the fraction that we're dividing by. Okay? For example, Jim has an 8-pound bag of nuts. He wants to fill smaller half-pound bags using the nuts. How many small bags can he make? So step 1, divide 8 by 1/2. Set up the division problem. Always write whole or mixed numbers as improper fractions. Again, the reason for that is so that we have a denominator to work with. So we have the 8-pound bag divided by the pounds that he wants in each bag. 8 divided by 1/2 is equal to, again, we have a whole number. We're going to put it over 1. Divided by 1/2. And then step 2, invert the fraction you are dividing by. Again, the one we're dividing by is the 1/2. So by inverting it, that means we're flipping the numerator and the denominator. Now, it's 8 over 1 times 2 over 1, which equals, again, you multiply straight across. 8 times 2 is 16, and 1 times 1 is 1. So Again, 16 divided by 1 is equal to 16. So Jim can make 16 small bags. Okay? There's a note here at the bottom of the page. It says when you multiply by a fraction less than 1, the answer is smaller than the number that you started with because you are finding a part of. So, for example, if I had 10 times 1 over 2, okay? This is a half of 10. This question is the same as what is half of 10? Now again, I can do it like the directions on this page told us. Take the whole number, put it over 1, times 1 over 2. 10 times 1 is 10. 1 times 2 is 2. I can divide this. 2 can go into 10 5 times. So again, remember it says when you multiply by a fraction that is less than 1, like 1/2, for example, that's less than 1, the answer is smaller than the number that you started with because you are finding a part of, a piece of that number. We started with 10 and we ended with 5 when we multiplied by a fraction less than 1. The second part of this note says when you divide by a fraction less than 1, the answer is greater than the number. So for example, again, if we have 10 divided by 1 over 2, okay, same as my example before, but it's a different operation. Then again, I would say 10 over 1, and I would change the division sign to a multiplication symbol. And then remember, we have to invert the fraction that we're dividing by. So it becomes 2 over 1. And again, 10 times 2 is 20. 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer, 20 divided by 1 is 20. Which is exactly what the note is saying. When you divide by a fraction that's less than 1, the answer is greater than the number. 20 is greater than what we started with, 10. Okay? So that's page 248. On page 249, you have the skill practice. Okay? There are 2 parts. A has 18 questions. You have to solve, reduce the answers to lowest terms, simplify improper fractions as mixed numbers. So if your final answer is an improper fraction, you have to change it to a mixed number. Okay? Please show your work for these problems. Again, use the examples on the previous page to help you figure out how to show your work. Okay? Part B, choose the one best answer to each question. And there are 4 of these short story problems. Okay? Again, show your work, please, and send me a picture of it when it's complete so I can give you credit for it. And like always, feel free to ask me questions on Remind. Okay? Thank you. Bye.